Hooray! Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to our Royal Family Astrology. I guess this is our continuous series where we look at the astrology charts of the British royal family and compare what's going on in the sky with what's happening in their lives. And if you've been living under a rock, you may not know that things have been pretty chaotic lately. But that would make sense because everything is popping off in the sky for them. So here we are. And as always, I am joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Kelli Glazebrook.
Hello.
And the wonderful Mo Olufemi. This is post New Year's Eve, post New Year's Day energy. We're feeling the sky right now. It is heavy times. And we just lost the wonderful Betty White. So There's a lot of feelings. This end of year has been pretty brutal, but here we are in 2022, and we're going to take a look at a couple of charts and see what's coming up for the British royal family.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year for them in 2021. I don't know why the slide isn't going. There you go. So here's just like some of the things. I'm not even sure this covers everything, but
Probably not.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, this already filled up like a whole slide and is very dramatic, but things definitely kicked off with a bang with the interview with Oprah that Meghan and Harry did in March. That feels honestly like 2 years ago. I'm not gonna lie.
It really does.
I was like, this is March of this year. Wow. And then right after that, Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband, died in April of this year. Then there was the 10th anniversary of William and Kate's wedding. That was April of this year as well. She's been, so many kids now. 4 great-grandchildren were born to Queen Elizabeth just this year, including Meghan and Harry's daughter, Lilibet Diana. That was in June. Prince Harry traveled to Kensington Palace and joined with his brother, Prince William, to unveil Diana's statue. That was July of 2021. That also feels like 2 years ago. And then some not so great things, which was the Queen's son, Prince Andrew, was officially served legal papers and for sexual assault allegations in connection to Andrew's friend, Jeffrey Epstein. And that was in October of 2021. Then the Queen has been kind of mysteriously ill off and on. It started in October of this year, and it's unclear if she's recovered or not, although she did give her speech on Christmas Day. Although she did look a little bit different than she has in the past, she did still give the speech. And then Barbados officially withdrew from the Commonwealth. Prince Charles was there, maskless for some reason.
Don't know why.
And he was there to observe the whole thing. That was November of 2021. I'm not sure anything specific happened in December, but if you guys remember anything, that's a year.
At the end of the year, we had a resurgence with Venus retrograde of Prince William's alleged affair.
That's
from
true.
April 2019, I think is when that original story came up. And that's interesting because that's around the time that Meghan was definitely being thrown under the bus. And so the bigger story around everything that happened from back then, I think, is also coming back into the picture. And then also we had the verdict for Ghislane Maxwell come down.
That's true, yeah.
I believe at the end of this past month. And she has been convicted on 5 out of 6 charges around basically sex trafficking minors around the world for Jeffrey Epstein to very powerful people all over the world. So things are definitely popping and locking across the pond. I don't know if Brexit is going off too well. The royals aren't exactly popular right now. They chased out the 2 most popular royals after the Queen. There seems to be some infighting between Charles and William in the press. It's a mess.
That's
so
very
this
messy.
is where we are.
So today we're going to use kind of a couple different techniques to look at some members of the royal family. I think we'll mostly be using solar return charts, yearly profections, and transits to highlight the themes that we see for these family members in 2022. And we'll go over them a little bit because I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with all of these techniques, but yeah, those will be probably the main ones that we'll discuss today. So people often like are around their birthday will often get readings called solar return charts. And that's basically when the sun returns to the exact place it was in the sky when you were born, if you're a person, or some other significant event occurred, such as a marriage or founding a business. If you know the time and the date that that happened, you can calculate solar returns for events as well. And basically, when you're looking at a solar return chart, it never, like, a lot of times I see people kind of thinking it like overrides your natal chart. Nothing ever overrides your natal chart, ever, ever, ever. The natal chart is always going to be preeminent, but what a solar return chart does is you can compare it to the natal chart and then see the differences and see which planets are highlighted or which ones are not, or muted more. And then you can kind of get a feeling for, oh, these are going to be the important events for this next year. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at a solar return chart. You'll always, always, always have to keep the natal chart in the back of your mind. Otherwise, you'll overemphasize the solar return part of it. So, and I think we have here, you can kind of see, I'll move.
Itty bitty.
Yeah, it's bitty, but you can kind of tell. On the left is Princess Diana's natal chart, and then on the right is the solar return chart. And I'm thinking for this, is it for 2022, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can kind of see like the planets are in different places, right? And there's different relationships between the planets. The angles are different. So what you would do is you would be looking at the chart on the right and then filtering it through the lens of the chart on the left, the natal chart, which is always going to be the most important one. And in case you're curious, people still can have solar return charts, and you can still look at transits to their charts even after they pass. And it will show like themes or things, maybe return to preeminence, or, you know, different things that will happen. So that's also kind of an interesting thing. Like, just because someone passes doesn't mean their natal chart like turns off.
No.
It's like it'll keep going. But yeah. So hopefully that makes sense to people, like kind of about how we're always considering a solar return chart, always in relationship to the natal chart. Always, always. And then profections. I don't know, somebody else. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Yeah.
So those of you who are more familiar with the resurgence of Hellenistic astrology in particular, this is a time where technique where you basically rotate the ascendant and each point in the chart, really, one sign each year, starting from the year you're born. And the idea is that it's supposed to act as a highlighter for when certain houses, planets, and signs are going to be more or less active in your chart or not. It's great to cross-reference with the solar return because it kind of points you in the direction of which planet and which area of life is most active, and you can actually compare the strength and position of a planet, like your perfected planet, in your natal chart compared to your solar return to make certain predictions about the year.
It's like such a great way, like if you know somebody is like perfected, like the Lord of the Year, you already like have so much information about how that's going to go, because you know, like, oh, what house does that rule, which houses, you know, what topics is it in charge of, is it stronger or weaker, and all that kind of stuff. So it like gives you so much information right off the bat with just a little bit of knowledge. But here's how you can calculate your perfection. So you can see here, like from age 0 to age 1, like you would use the ascendant right there. So that's like why the 0 is there. I think that confuses people, but you haven't turned 1 yet. So that's 0
You're
to
months
1.
old in the first house for the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then once you turn 1, so on your birthday, you would enter into your second perfection year. So when you're 1, then you're in a second house year. When you're 2, you're in a third house year, and then you just kind of go all around the circle. And it's just really interesting because then you can take the sign that's on the cusp of the first or the second house. So if you're, say like a Cancer rising like me, and then you're in a first house year, that would be, the moon would be in charge of it. Then you look to see where the moon is, and then you can kind of get all information about, is my moon in a better or worse position this year, and all that kind of stuff. And what's the transits to the moon, or all that kind of information to like start making predictions.
Yeah, I do want to comment because I know a lot of people who use quadrant houses get confused and they're like,
Oh yeah, that's true.
I have like an intersected house. Do I get 2 years? No, it's a sign-based technique if you're going to use quadrant. So you just consider like, instead of emphasizing like the house, you would emphasize like the sign and the planet that rules it instead of the house, if that makes sense. If you wanted to do it in a quadrant context, but as you'll see later in this episode, like we're going to use this in the context of whole sign houses, and you can get a lot out of it with whole sign. But it still works for quadrant. You just have to use it as a sign-based technique.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever used it like with a quadrant system. I've just been a whole sign girl.
Same.
But just in case people were wondering, because I've seen people go, oh, I went from like a first house Aquarius year to a second house Aries year, and it's like, that's not how that
works.
A sign for every house.
Yeah.
That's
so like for me, I'm 43, so I'm in a 8th house year, and for me that's a Saturn year. So I've had my 2 Saturn years back to back, because I also had one for, of course, good old 42, which was also a Saturn year for me. But that means in 2022, when I turn 44, I'll be in a 9th house year, which is a Jupiter year for me, which is like, yeah. Fun times. So we'll be using that. And then we also have transits. I don't know if somebody wants to talk about transits.
So transits are the ongoing motion of planets overhead right now. So the planets that are moving across the skies and moving essentially in our lives is what a transit is. And you can think of it like you're being worked over from the outside in, essentially. You can't really control transits. You just have to kind of respond to what the heavens are giving you in that moment. So it's fun to look at transits because you can see them coming and you can see them going, I think. So, when you look at transits at a natal chart, you can see the influence. These are constant cycles that we're going through. So you can track them forward, you can track them backwards. And then if we consider the solar return chart and the profections, we can also add the transits in at the same time for a little bit of extra flavoring. So you kind of have like a 3 to 4 layer cake of interpretations that you can start sifting through and putting a whole story together with. So there's typically a lot of moving parts when we're doing predictive work, because it's not just one thing that we're looking at.
I think people think that you can just look at like one thing and like make predictions, but it's like almost always people using various techniques stacked on top of each other. Yeah, like a cake, like you said, to like come up with like a prediction.
So like the base cake would be like your natal chart, maybe profections and solar return would kind of be the middle 2 layers, and then the transits on top would be kind of the thing.
Yeah, a little frosting. Spread it over. But yeah, here's a chart with transits.
So in the middle ring, we have Princess Diana's natal chart. And on the outside ring is what's happening in the sky right now around her chart. So even though Princess Diana has since passed away many years ago, we can still look at her chart and say, oh, well, let's say, for example, stories about her money came about right about now. That would make sense if she's having all of these transits coming out in her second house, for example, which is about income and finances. So if something like that was to come about and we were to see the chart, okay, it would make sense if there was some story or information about her resources and her money or things like that. And I think the most recent thing I heard was the fact that she had put money aside for one of her children.
Mm-hmm.
Has been a story that's been coming up a lot in the end of year review kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when the statue was revealed over the summer, it was like transits to her 10th or something like that, her 10th house, like prominence and all that kind of stuff. So that was interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yep.
Alrighty. So hopefully that kind of lays like the groundwork for understanding like where we're coming from, and we'll try to use like the correct terminology and also kind of explain like where we're coming from when we're doing the predictive work, so you can kind of maybe follow along at home or practice on your own charts. But we first wanted to do the big the big
Madame Queen.
Madame Queen.
Yes. Miss Queen Elizabeth II. She is still in her 95th year of life.
Correct.
So that would place her in a 12th house profection year. So this is really about wrapping up a lot of cycles before she starts a brand new wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were to look at her chart, we know that Elizabeth is a Capricorn rising, and her 12th house cusp has Jupiter on the cusp. Or sorry, Sagittarius. And Sagittarius as a sign is ruled by Jupiter, right? So we know that for the remainder of this year until she has her next birthday in April, Jupiter in Aquarius is the lord of the year for her, right? And so we're going to look at who Jupiter is talking to. So for her chart, Jupiter is definitely talking to Mars because Mars is the next door neighbor. So we know in her 12th house years, there tends to be some inflammation, irritation that might come up. Some poking and prodding, maybe about her money and where it's coming from is a possibility. We know that Jupiter definitely sees Saturn because Jupiter is square to her Saturn up in the 11th house. So there might be some things that come up around maybe the people that she associates with, her institutions. See the story coming out already. And then Jupiter doesn't get any help from Venus because Venus is right next door in the sign of Pisces. And I always say that's kind of like trying to look into your neighbor's window. Like since you're right next door, you can't really see in. So Venus in Pisces cannot assist Jupiter this year because she's right next door. So she's kind of unable to add any charm or grace or smooth over anything. But Jupiter is still strong on his own, right? Jupiter is Jupiter. He is the big Santa Claus kind of planet. So he's going to buffer some of the impact of Mars and Saturn to an extent.
And I think you can kind of see that in that a lot of scandals have touched the royal family, but she's more popular than ever. By far and away the most popular member of her family.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. Her midheaven ruler, she has the midheaven in Scorpio. The midheaven ruler is Mars in Aquarius. So her reputation always gets the benefit of Jupiter right next door to kind of mitigate the worst of what could really be. So Mars and Saturn are pretty impactful for her, but Jupiter really does kind of, ease the blows. Right? Like, oh, your children are caught up with all sorts of blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, but I'm the queen. And it's just like, okay, like it's weird, but that's Jupiter. Jupiter kind of can provide that protection sometimes.
You know what I've been thinking of? Because like, I think another thing is you guys have to think about like, what planet is doing what. Like Saturn is the oppressive force, but like Saturn rules her. So she is that force, right? And you know what I think? Like Jupiter being like, the people you interact with every day, at least in her chart, because it rules the third, but it also rules the 12th house of like isolation and being hidden away. And I'm wondering if like, for the fact that Jupiter is besieged, right? Because it's between Mars and Saturn. It's like whoever's handling her is like protecting her image by keeping her tucked away because this is a year where she had to endure a lot of loss, right? So and I've noticed that like it's also a year where she's had to spend a lot of time like secluded and away from people, possibly for health reasons. And I feel like that's where some of that 12th house rulership that Jupiter has also lightening her load in terms of duties and responsibilities, like that Jupiter Saturn square with reception comes in for her. And I feel like that played out a lot, especially in the latter half of 2021, sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mo, because I think people forget that sometimes when you're looking at your natal chart, like you can be that influence for other people. Like it's not always things that are happening to you, it's how you impact other people. And I think she is Saturn for a lot of people in her life. And you can see that so close to the midheaven. And she's often, I think, that kind of responsibility and duty force that she kind of impresses on other members of her family or those close to her.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of that's come up a little bit, where there's a lot of conversation about what she is allowing and what she is doing. But like you said, Mo, she's handled by many different people, right? And that kind of shows up with these Aquarian signature planets. Like there's a whole team, a whole collective behind the scenes, whether the firm or not, or the men in the gray suits, who are basically kind of acting through her and using her image as a way to kind of say she's doing things, whether or not she's doing them or not. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it's just like how much of her power is personal power and how much of it is really power that's, she's kind of being used as the figurehead, possibly.
I think that's that moon in the 8th too. Like it's really hard sometimes to know what she's doing and what's being put on her.
So, but she is still the most popular royal of the remaining working royals. Second to her would be Kate, but it's a very big gulf between the two. So when Miss Elizabeth does decide to cross over, there's going to be a very big vacuum left behind.
She's been queen now for, well, her platinum jubilee is coming up, right? So 70 years. Yeah. And that's in spring or summer of 2022, I believe, somewhere in there.
I think it's
late spring. It's like sometime in June.
Yeah, it's getting her coronation date, but I think it's a Gemini chart, if I'm not mistaken. So we shall see if she wants to continue. Right?
Yeah. When you see 12th house years, sometimes it's very much like a decision that needs to be made before you can move on to your first house.
Like she may decide that she does not want to continue.
Yeah.
To be quite frank, I wouldn't blame her. It's just like
Betty decided to leave us too.
I mean, she's like, I'm tired. Like the world's gone crazy. Everybody's sick. All my friends are dying. Like
her husband passed. Like
my husband has passed. My kids are crazy. My favorite grandson is run across the fucking sea. like I don't know, so we're gonna wait and see what she decides between now and her next birthday.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to clear this out and we can look at the solar return, or?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have anything to add, Mo?
Sorry, no, I don't have anything else to add.
Oh, Liz.
Yeah. Okay, solar return.
So this is the solar return chart for her coming birthday. This is the one that's the closest to her at this point, because April is 3 months away?
Don't say
that. April is closer to us than, the year behind us. So we could just see where things are kind of falling in this chart for her. So let's remember that her first house year will now be a Saturn year, right? So remember we talked about her 12th house cusp being Sagittarius with Jupiter as the ruler. She is a Capricorn rising, so her first house year will be ruled by Saturn, right? And we have Saturn in Aquarius.
That's right.
So we're going to have a Saturn square Saturn year.
That's tough.
Saturn is squaring her natal Saturn. So, think of Saturn in her chart as kind of representing her, her form, her physical form too can come up through that Saturn. So this can be a somewhat taxing year for her energetically, with Saturn sitting square to that ruler for her.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And in conjunct the MC again.
It's also coming through that second house for her.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
wondering again, maybe there might be some restrictions financially, some more questions about the money possibly, especially the money that's coming in from taxpayers, if any. Could be
No.
something.
You know what
Mhm.
I think of with Saturn being in that last decan of Aquarius? It's
Hmm.
almost gonna be like her needing to shed responsibility because she's aging, right?
Mhm.
And so like as she has to step back from her duties, raising questions about like how much more can the country invest into this institution?
Mm.
Mhm.
It's interesting though too, because you're also seeing a repeat of emphasis on the 12th house with the sun there. So she's leaving a 12th house here and going to a first house, but she's not really leaving 12th house because her solar return puts her sun like squarely there. So it's like, oh, okay, she's not done being isolated. And I wouldn't be surprised if she has ongoing health concerns with that.
Mhm. Especially with Jupiter and Neptune in the 10th,
Mhm.
squared to the ascendant descendant line.
Yeah.
So sometimes Jupiter can, exacerbate conditions that are already existing.
Well, we see
Um,
that. Jupiter and Pisces.
yeah, and also there was a story that came out, I think, earlier last year about her drinking.
Oh yeah. They're like, no
How,
drinking.
yeah, they had to tell her to cut back with the cocktails. So I don't know, that Jupiter Neptune kind of, that kind of gives me some of those vibes around, maybe imbibing a little bit too much, or, that's an interesting transit to have.
Mhm.
It's definitely kind of an escapism transit, like not
Especially
wanting to
with
be around.
the South Node in the sixth.
Mhm.
Well, because the
Even
sixth is like, health and sickness and all that kind of stuff. And it's like kind of being sucked down back to the sixth house. Like you have to take care of your body.
Mhm.
I mean, even the ruler of this chart is in the 12th as well. Um, like applying to a conjunction with the North Node. So I think like there's just going to be this emphasis on needing to keep out of the public eye, probably for her own benefit.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to see much of her.
This is giving somewhat of a convalescent kind of vibe to it, to an
Mhm.
extent.
Do you guys see like with the moon like in the seventh, almost kind of like her kind of passing off some of her shine onto others? I'm just like, interesting.
Yeah, like look at the moon. Like I think it's like closest aspect is that square with Venus, who
Venus.
rules the fifth house. Like I think there's going to be this like transition of duties, this transfer
Yeah.
of duties and like titles to
Mhm.
children or somebody.
Yeah.
Do you
Like,
think it would be a woman? Because it's the moon and Venus.
hmm.
Oh yeah, probably.
So who? Would it be Anne? Would it be Kate?
Oh,
Mm,
my gut says Kate.
yeah.
Kate.
We'll see.
I
Mhm.
know we'll see, but
We'll
uh
see.
yeah, I did want to comment on like some of the overlays that are kind of like concerning.
Mhm.
There's one thing you have to do with solar returns, is to look at where the angles of each chart falls in the other chart. So
Mhm.
the return ascendant falls in her sixth whole sign house of the
Mhm.
natal chart, which is highlighting again changes in work, possibly changes in health, but like
Mhm.
her ascendant falls in the eighth house of this chart,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is again having to do with like legacies,
Mhm.
loss, death,
With
things like
Pluto.
that. With Pluto there, and I think Pluto's pretty close to like it's already separated from her ascendant, but it's still
Mhm.
pretty close.
It's close, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this is just a challenging year where she's going to start winding down and like thinking about like how to organize things and pass off duties so that, you know, the monarchy as she established it can carry on. But from the eighth house perspective, I'm also thinking about, you know, transits that are happening for Andrew, the Duke of York, because he has a lot of stuff moving through Capricorn as well. And I'm just thinking about the potential settlements that are going to have to be paid out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with Pluto there, like draining your treasury, you know?
Yep.
Like, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that.
And possibly maybe even some of her reputation, because Saturn is sitting on the midheaven too. So there definitely could be some tie-in to like as we're draining the treasury, also kind of draining the image of what she's built, because I mean, it's kind of rough.
Yeah.
She has the heir who, you know, his reputation's already been kind of tarnished by his shooting his first wife. Then you have his son who's now getting kind of tied up in rumors about his own infidelities. And then you have the next son after that who's tied up in sexual assault scandal. So this is, you know, this is what the legacy is so far. And I don't know if they can clean it up.
Yeah.
Or if they want to clean it up, to be quite frank.
Yeah. Well, you look at the 10th house with Mars there too, like I don't know, it also speaks to maybe some infighting, like as she winds down. Like I keep thinking, oh, there's going to be some fights over like who takes over and what it's going to look like. With Mars just right at the tippy top.
We'll see. But yeah,
that 12th house.
I was just gonna ask, like, do you guys have any transits you think like really stand out for the queen? Like, if you had to pick like 5, which ones would you like highlight for her chart?
5 transits for her chart?
Yeah, like
in the natal?
Yeah, like to the natal, yeah. So like
natal?
let's go back to the natal.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, these eclipses are going to be going off in her chart. That 5th house, 11th house dynamic. So definitely things to do with her children coming up, and definitely things to do with the institution. So, and that pulls in. So that whole family of fixed planets or fixed sign planets in that chart, 2nd house, 5th house, 8th and 11th house are definitely going to be getting a lot of action this year.
I was thinking of the Venus Mars conjunctions in Cap and Aquarius. The little dance that they're doing. Right across, tippy topping over her 1st and 2nd house.
I was thinking also Saturn coming to her natal Mars and Jupiter.
Yeah, okay.
That could be interesting. I'm very curious how Jupiter is going to show up in her 3rd house.
Oh, I think it's probably going to be like more like media fawning over her. Probably the extension of her like extended family. Like personally, even like with the eclipses, I won't be surprised if there's like another great grandchild or 2 or 3 born this year. Yeah, like I don't know, like I feel like the Jupiter in Pisces, especially while Venus is there, like in the week after her solar return, might feel really nice because there are certain like representations in the media, especially because this will be the time that they're building up towards like her platinum jubilee. You know, positive media coverage around that and like the duration of her reign.
Yeah.
I'm sure they pull out all the stops for that. Very glamorous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you have to tie in like ninth house themes too when you're looking at the third house, and like book publishing, all kinds of magazine, like media saturation kind of thing. Yeah.
No, exactly. Like the only thing I worry about though is that like that Saturn retrograde period, because Saturn will again like station to a square with her natal Saturn, which rules her. It's going to go over that Jupiter. It's going to go over that Mars. And I think it stations pretty close to the Mars sometime in October.
And are those, oh yeah, okay. Those degrees, like late degrees, right? Okay.
Doesn't she also have that? We're going to have a Mars retrograde in Gemini going through that sixth house of hers. And that's, I think, also towards the end of this year. So I think October or so. So we could see some health related issues for her as well.
Yeah, I think there's just so many things pointing to either a long convalescence or more and more health concerns.
I would definitely watch her health when Jupiter goes into Aries, and that's going to be in May. Because that Jupiter will cross over Mercury, and Mercury is the ruler of her sixth house. So we definitely have to watch her mobility, any head issues, blood pressure, Aries type stuff as well.
Jupiter is going to go retrograde over all of that too.
So I'd be very careful with her. It's like this kind of reminds me of like an accident, like a falling or hitting the head or things like that.
Yeah, they definitely need to. I think she definitely needs to scale back, and if she doesn't, she's going to be forced to in some way or the other if she doesn't do it voluntarily.
Yeah, no, I agree. Also that the eclipse that happens before her Jubilee, the one on the middle of May.
Right. What is that? The 16th?
Right on top of her chart ruler.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which I think will also be in a very tight square with Saturn. So yeah, more issues around lightening her load. Possibly like some kind of like, I'd be surprised if she has a diagnosis that like makes her need to, step back and take on less. But no, a lot of the transits, I agree, are just looking like her doing a lot less, and maybe some health scares and seeing less of her even.
Yeah.
Well, she's 95, almost 96. Prince Charles. Oh boy.
Oh boy. That's all.
He's just, oh boy.
Yeah, boy. And so he's 73 right now?
Yes, he just started his second house year.
Right.
Yes. So self-worth, self-esteem, money.
So here's the natal chart.
So natal chart, we have, now that he's entered into his second house year, second house cusp has Virgo on the cusp. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and he has Mercury in Scorpio conjunct the South Node.
In the fourth.
In the fourth.
Mercury is also ruling his 11th as well.
Yes.
Which is worth noting.
So it's interesting. There was just a story that came out about him, I think at the end of the year, that was talking about his faithful manservant trying to do deals to sell, I think, what was it, knighthoods and UK citizenship. So that Mercury.
No, when you said faithful manservant, I thought of the fact that Saturn, ruler of his 6th and 7th, is activated. And I think that it speaks to the sextile between Saturn and Mercury in this chart. Like, I think that's the tightest aspect Mercury makes, actually, besides the conjunction with the South Node. And having that like close connection who's willing to do anything to get you the money you want, right? Like,
no matter how shadowy.
No matter how shadowy, exactly.
And it's in the fourth house. So the fact that they were kind of selling UK citizenship.
and family connections. Literally selling your family like connections to like people from the outside the 11th house.
So you want in with the Windsors.
Yeah, no, like I don't know why he was doing that. That's really bad, but like we'll get into this with transits later, but for the fact that Charles is beginning his nodal return period right now.
So explain that just so people know.
So basically what happens is about every 18 and a half to 19 years, the nodes of the moon will return to the signs they were in when you were born. And so the way I think about important ingresses, like the movement of the nodes into new signs or even like outer planets into signs, is that the return starts as soon as like the planet is in the sign, right? And so the themes will start building around this story of Mercury conjunct the South Node for Charles, but also equally the moon conjunct his North Node in the 10th. A lot of that will start like at the beginning of, or sorry, towards the end of this month, like when the nodes move into Taurus and Scorpio respectively.
Well, this should be interesting.
And I mean, it's all like family and reputation, right?
Like, holy crap. Okay, I also forgot to mention this. So I know earlier when I talked about perfections, like I said, technically you can perfect any point, like whether it's a house, your lots, or like the nodes in your chart. If you use whole sign houses, you can actually perfect like the whole sign house like by one sign or like every year to see like, you know, which topic that whole sign house is, like which sign and planet that whole sign house is handing off to. And you can actually see when a whole sign house meets its ruler. And so Charles's fourth house is meeting its ruler Mars in the second house year because it's one sign over. And so the themes of having the ruler of the fourth in the fifth are going to become louder. And so I think matters related to his children, his relationship to his children, and like where his children live and things like that, like are going to become more relevant this year.
Yeah.
What else is happening in this chart? So let's talk about the word of the year again. So Saturn speaks to who? Saturn speaks to Mars and to Jupiter by square, right? Because they are next door or in the fifth house. Oops, sorry. There they are. And then he does not get any help from Venus because Venus, again, is next door in the sign of Libra. So like you were saying, Mo, this fifth house is fairly important because these planets are involved in talking to Saturn during these second house years. So, you know, I mean, some of the things that are coming up too is the affairs of his children, the romantic affairs of it, especially his firstborn, because William would be represented by that fifth house as supposedly Charles's firstborn son. And so William would be Jupiter conjunct Mars, essentially, to Charles. So what are we hearing about pretty soon after Charles's birthday is William's potential affairs. Right? Yeah. So that's definitely interesting.
Oh yeah, Charles is having his Mars return right now. I just forgot about that.
Really?
In the fifth house of children and his own love affairs too.
Because now people are coming back up around like, well, he's following his father, right?
And also like all this stuff about Princess Diana has been coming out, like that new movie Spencer, and stuff like that. So I think people are talking more and remembering more about why they didn't like Charles to begin with.
Amen. And drawing parallels to William, which may not be good because, you know, people already have not so great feelings about Charles and his behavior. To know that his son is following down that same path doesn't make them look redeeming right now. Right? Cheating has become less popular, if you can believe, over the past 20 or 30 years since Charles was doing it to his first wife. So this could be definitely a big image problem for them.
And they keep acting like they're living in the 1500s when, you know, having a mistress as a royal person was like a literal title that someone could have in court, you know. They keep acting like those are the same old rules, and you're like, not really, not anymore.
Yeah, in those circles. Now remember, this is a very insular community. Like the royals and I guess their courtiers and that whole social situation, they still believe in a lot of these things. This is how they get down. So I think people are going to be questioning the values that second house of the king to be.
Yeah,
And
literally.
they may not vibe with it because, you know, he has Mercury on the south node. They're like, we don't like what you got. This is really shady. Like, we don't want you selling citizenships and things like that. We don't want you passing down these ideas about infidelity and things like that into the public mind.
Yeah, like for somebody who's trying to revamp their image, Mercury conjunct the south node is not good for you. That's not a winning transit for you at all.
I mean, also, even though that moon in Taurus is exalted, I mean, it's still ruler of the 12th house and it's opposite. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's just giving more scandal.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed before, like, I think part of Charles's karma, I think, was, you know, really figuring out how to communicate his feelings.
Right.
Especially with the women in his life, which doesn't seem to be very easy for him.
No.
Yeah.
Doesn't help that he keeps picking women that fall into his 12th house.
Yeah. So both Camilla and Diana, as Cancer Sun women, are in his 12th house. So I don't think he's fully cognizant all the time of his feelings and how to process them. And then also very romantic with that Venus Neptune in the third. So I think he has very high ideals about what love should be, but not really a lot of practical ways of going about making it happen.
And prone to projecting a false image onto other people.
And then being mad. And then being mad when they can't show up the way that he thinks they should show up. So, you know, this is also a lot of mother issues too, because that moon in Taurus would probably be Queen Elizabeth, who is that 0-degree Taurus sun. So that would be her up there, right?
This is literally the poster chart for mommy issues.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So
yeah, they haven't
not to say that he can't resolve them.
No, of course you always can.
He has the funds, he has the resources, but if he doesn't have the drive to, then no bueno. Trouble times. So what's happening for him in his solar return chart? All right, so he just had a birthday in November 2021. So we said that Mercury, again, is the ruler of his chart, correct? For his rule of the year for him. And Mercury is in the same sign that it was at the time of his birth, so that's helpful.
Wow.
Right? Mercury is in Scorpio. It's between Mars and the sun. So Mars is a part of the story for the year. Venus does help him out. So maybe Venus will be giving him some support in some shape or form. We don't know how. And then Saturn and Jupiter are also involved for this year. So this is a mixed bag.
Yeah.
For him. I think he has a little bit less luck in some ways.
So I think like the idea that we're gonna stop hearing about like his cash for citizenship and cash for honors thing, like we're gonna hear a lot more about that this year. Because like look at the fact that like Mars is conjunct Mercury in the 9th. Yes, it's kind of hidden by the sun because both are combust. But it's like opposite Uranus and like square Saturn. So I think that like so I'm seeing Saturn is representing the media in this chart. And Saturn is technically his co-lord because it's in the perfected house, right? So I really think that like this is going to be the media kind of holding him by the balls a little bit and saying, we know what you've been doing, and like just kind of slowly like leaking things. And I really feel like this is a position where like the hidden enemy is like empowered to reveal all sorts of stuff about Charles and what he's doing.
Especially if you
Um,
look at the ascendant smush between the moon and Neptune.
Yep.
That's definitely
And then that ruler
more.
in the 12th.
Mhm.
And so Saturn in his natal chart rules over his 6th and his 7th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, some of those faithful manservants and other people that he has done probably business dealings with might come out into the open. And, there might even be some stuff around former love affairs too, I would think.
Yeah.
There might be more stories coming out about, whether it's Kanga or, Camilla or whoever else he was hanging around with back in the day. Because the nodes for him are still falling into his natal 5th and 11th house.
Yeah.
So there still could be some stuff coming out about his romances.
Yeah, I would say triply so, because the 5th house ruler of this chart is on the ascendant and like it's kind of void. So like I feel like whatever gets put out is gonna get put out, right? He can't really do anything.
I keep seeing that stellium of planets in the 9th just opposing that shocking Uranus in the 3rd, and I'm like, ooh, sibling relationships are going to be shook up. Like big time. And I don't know, I think he's probably going to come out the winner though. Like come out on top, but it's not going to be fun times for him.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a lot of work.
I mean, he's seasoned. He's developed a way of keeping his cool so far. But I wonder with that Sun, Mercury, Mars, if there's going to be some blow-ups here and there.
Yeah.
That we might hear about or see possibly, because it is in the 9th house.
Yeah, it's so visible.
Like, I also like what Janelle was saying about like the love affair stuff coming up again, because like the midheaven of this chart is like right on his Jupiter. Like, and then Jupiter also rules the return ascendant, and that return ascendant falls in his 8th natally. Like it's just giving secrets, and probably secrets about indulgences he's partaken in, or like relationships he's had, like probably even shit about his children. So yeah.
Oh boy. So it's looking a little bit dicey for Prince Charles.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much help Venus can really give him, but she'll try.
She'll try.
I feel like it's going to be more like shocking things, or things that like, I don't know, she'll try to like help him with, and it may just end up getting worse.
I feel like Venus is Kate in this case. I don't know why, but she is the Capricorn sun. And that Venus falls in his natal 6th. So I feel like they're really going to try to use Kate quite a bit to smooth over. And like, oh, look at Kate in the pretty dress, and look at Kate, she smiles so beautifully, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who else they have in their arsenal at this point.
Right. Not a lot.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the 12th house is just, I don't know. There's so many secrets in there.
Yeah, there are.
That Saturn, Jupiter, just like, whew.
I think there's going to be a lot more coming out around his business dealings.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm also thinking about the fact that his natal midheaven in Aries falls in the 2nd house of this chart. And like, again, like that Mars being in Scorpio in the 9th, like just more being published about like how he's been using his money and stuff.
Probably from an international perspective too, but also I think, doesn't Scorpio rule over oil?
Yeah.
True, yeah.
So, I know he does the eco thing, but there could be some stuff that comes out that's very contradictory to those things as well.
Well, a lot of the people that he did the cash for honors for were oil barons in the Middle East. So
And then also, I'm sure some of his travel stuff is going to come up. Like, aren't you, wasting all this money flying this place and that place? And, so yeah, there might be some fights around that for him.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Charles, good luck.
Do you want to look at transits? I was like,
Yeah.
There we go.
So what do we expect transit wise? So we know the eclipses are happening in his 10th house. They're happening in his 4th house. So he's having that nodal return that we spoke about. And it's also going to impact his 1st and his 7th. And he also has Saturn still in his 7th. Jupiter has moved off into the 8th house. So Jupiter is going to give him a lot less protection against any kind of legal situations, any kind of complaints. Like, there's going to be a little bit less buffer, I say, against those things.
Yeah, I agree. He's losing that little protection, although Jupiter might help him protect some of his money a little bit.
Yeah, so Jupiter in the 8th might protect his money, possibly. We'll see. It can bring out other things, though.
Yeah.
Debts and, who he owes money to. Like, again, some of that shared resources stuff can come up with Jupiter, too. So, for example, Andrew also is a Leo rising, but I think Jupiter during going through his 8th house is bringing up all the people that he's associated with the current sex scandals.
Sure.
So because he shared those resources and experiences with those people, right?
Yeah.
So not ideal. But maybe there'll be some positive press for him when Jupiter goes over his midheaven in the springtime. Or I don't think it gets that far, though. I think Jupiter gets up to 8 degrees.
Okay.
So he might get some support, but I'm not sure.
I don't think it'll be a lot. Yeah. I think you're right.
Maybe a new baby will come in.
Wait, babies for when? Like when?
Spring. It's like spring from May to October, when Jupiter gets into his 9th and stimulates the 5th via transit.
Oh, I could see like another grandkid, honestly. Like, I know, okay, everybody's gonna laugh at me, and I know Meghan and Harry said they were done, but like that North Node and Harry's freaking like 5th, and Uranus still there. I'm sorry. Like,
Might be a surprise.
I'm sorry. They thought they were done.
If there's another Sussex baby, you heard it here first.
I'm predicting another Sussex baby. I'm sorry. It's just.
But if it's not a baby, we also know that they have a ton of creative projects that they're working on.
Yes.
So it could also just be
it's sometimes
the
hard
amount of things.
Because I think we're going to see a lot more from the Sussexes creatively this next year. So it's kind of hard to like, is it a baby? Is it a creative project? Is it a movie? Is it a podcast? Like,
Because Harry has his book coming out. They still have their Spotify podcast to deal with. They have Netflix stuff to contend with. They have, I think they have the, not the Hunger Games. the Invictus Games. They got the Invictus Games. So, they have a lot to deal with. So we'll see if it's a baby. But it might just be all the things they have to coordinate and put together for all of their stuff.
I mean, yeah, another thing is like, like I know people want William and Kate to like be pregnant again. And like, here's the thing, it is totally possible because both of them are moving into a 5th house here, but like
what?
Yeah. I just
You're not seeing it?
Like, I don't know. Like, I mean,
for Crown and Country, anything's possible.
Now, here's the thing. Like, the thing is, what gets me is that for William, that's Jupiter through his 5th, and that's his chart ruler. For Kate, like, because Kate is also one of these Leo rising people. I don't know. It's not giving that. That's all I'm gonna say. It's not giving that. So
yeah.
What about this Venus retrograde, like right now through Charles's 6th house? It's interesting.
Wouldn't that be some
No.
of the fallout that's happening with that employee that he had? Was it Michael Fawcett was his name?
Oh yeah.
Because I think that might have happened during the shadow period, that
Yeah.
story coming out, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if that means that it's going to come back around and we're going to start asking questions about the money.
Mm.
Like, how many of these sales did you make?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like this wasn't the first.
Mm-hmm.
So what else could it be?
Well, because right after the Venus retrograde, then there are all these Venus Mars conjunctions in Cap, right? Or one in Cap and one in Aquarius.
Mm.
It'll be interesting to see if there's more stuff coming out about either employees or people in his circle also being accused of, either sexual assault or sexual crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, didn't the whole like it was Charles like who made the comments about the skin color come out like during the retrograde, like during Venus retrograde?
Mm.
I feel like it did.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I feel like more leaks coming out of Charles's office,
Mm.
might come up, but I also feel like just because of like how hard this is hitting Andrew's chart and like, Venus does rule siblings for Charles, like I do think a lot of what's going on with Andrew is going to be a consequence of the sixth house Venus retrograde, especially as Elizabeth's health gets worse and like Charles has to take on more responsibility.
Yeah, I think his siblings are going to be a real pain in his butt. To be honest,
he's really going to accelerate the slimming down of the monarchy.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, the other thing too we have to think about is during that same period with Jupiter transiting his midheaven, is that around the same time that it'll be transiting his mother's sixth house ruler.
Yeah.
So remember, her ruler is Mercury in Aries. So again, that could be him ascending more prominently, if not by springtime, then possibly by the end of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, there's like the transits are very like transitory, right? Like moving him from one kind of like relationship with his siblings and his parents and people around him to like a very different kind of relationship, maybe.
Oh yeah, like I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but like I think because you have to think about like the Venus synodic cycle and stuff.
Oh,
And
sure.
I think that like later this year, even though some people think the conjunction is in like perfecting in Scorpio, it actually perfects at the very end of Libra.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
the first in a I think this is the first time we get Venus retrograde conjunctions in Libra, and they're going to be in Libra for the next like couple hundred years or something, like
Wow.
instead of Scorpio. And so it's kind of a big deal. And it's not really, I don't think it's really like hitting as much in his chart, but for the fact that this transit is happening in his third house, it feels kind of big to me, just because it's like aspecting his Jupiter as well. Like, because I think it's like signifying to me like the handing off of like authority to him. And so that changes like the line of succession for one, but also like the status his heirs get access to. So like I really
that's
feel like,
true. Yeah, like his kids will get that the bounty of that too.
Yeah. 100%. Like I think that's a huge one to watch for Charles. And then like the reason I mentioned Venus retrogrades is because the next one is in Leo in 2023. And so I feel like Charles this year is being really fast tracked towards like
taking over,
taking the monarchy. Yeah.
Well, let's see if he can keep it. Because
yeah, getting it's one thing, keeping it is another.
Yeah.
No guarantees, buddy.
Yeah, no
Not
guarantees.
with the way these kind of transits are moving and the way the news. I mean, there's a lot of protection still. He's getting a ton of protection via the press.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're gonna find that out because like later this year he moves into the Libra perfection year, which is when like, you know, the Venus, I feel like all that Venus stuff, you know, really gets activated.
Mhm.
And so like, yeah, I think a lot of the stuff going on in the background is like setting him up for like, you know, like what's going to happen like in 2023 especially. I think it's going to be a big year for Charles for sure.
I think towards the end of 2022, when that Mars retrograde in Gemini, that's when he's going to hit maybe speed bumps with the press in the 11th.
Yeah.
And the
But-
stuff about kids, his kids, all that kind of stuff will also kind of maybe start hitting him
I
more.
think that's gonna be him in the fucking briefing war between him and Kensington Palace, like
Okay, yeah.
going like,
I mean,
His son. Yeah.
yeah, like
I can't see him trying to go after Harry because Harry has already put him on notice. Just don't try.
well, they have the same Mars. It's like, why would you do that? Like, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. When you have the same Mars with someone, that's just a little tip, right, Mo?
It's like war of attrition. Like, trust me. Like, I'm literally like with somebody who's like born on the opposite side of a Mars retrograde in Virgo Leo, and we have like literally a similar Mars placement. It's like war of attrition all the time.
Oh,
It-
me and my husband have the same Mars down to the same degree.
oh my
Yeah.
god! It's
Yeah.
like what's the point? at
There's
that
no point.
None.
Yeah. Anything else about Charles?
No, he's gonna have a full year.
Yeah, no, I feel like, which we're obviously doing like at the beginning of next year, we're gonna do 2023. I feel like Charles in 2023 is gonna have a lot more. So like
Mhm. He'll be a lot more
there'll
responsibility.
be a lot more to talk about. This year is
Mhm.
just kind of like the
Transition.
okay, it's the transition for him
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Andrew.
Andrew.
I swear I tried to find a non-creepy picture. I swear.
Impossible. It's
This is
impossible.
one of his better ones, so you did a good job. Andrew. So Andrew is what? 60, going to be 62?
Turning 62, yeah.
He's turning 62 for his next birthday.
Mm.
So he's wrapping up a second house year.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
like his
I just want to say too, we've already done natal chart delineations for all these people.
yes.
So you can go back and look at them if you want like more in depth. I think we spent a long time on each of these people. So this is just like a little overview. Sorry, Janelle. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Let me see. So we have Andrew here, and Andrew is finishing up a second house year. Oh wait, is he? Right?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so he's finishing up a second house year. That puts Virgo on the second house cusp, like his brother. They're both Leo rising, so they have similar cusps. So that means Mercury is the ruler of this second house year,
Mhm.
right?
But he's going into a third house here, right?
He's going into a third house year, but I guess let's just
No,
talk
we
about
should
how
talk about his second house year because
yeah.
like, he gets that Mercury retrograde that's coming up.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what has really over the course of this year, it's been a drip. What happened? Did I lose the
Kelly, you're
Oh.
muted.
Kelly?
Sorry. That was
I
weird.
lost the slides.
I lost everything. I was like, what in the heck happened?
They don't want us talking about Andrew.
No, they
Okay.
don't.
Let's oh, and it's still recording. So, okay.
You saw it here first, folks.
That was strange and very weird.
We don't want us talking about Andrew. Okay.
Okay.
Ooh. Well, it's hard not to, girl.
I know.
This man, y'all let this man travel from coast to coast, sea to shining sea, doing Lord knows fucking what.
Okay, are we
We're
better
good.
now?
Yeah, we're good
Yes.
again.
And we're still recording.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
we're still
Okay, we're
recording.
good. Okay, so
Okay.
where did it stop? You said what?
I was going to talk about who Mercury was talking to.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we said Mercury is in charge of the second. So let's set that up again. So Mercury speaks to Venus and Mars and Saturn
Yup.
by sextile. And this Mercury also speaks to Jupiter. So this is a Mercury that gets a lot of activity. So
He's
for his-
busy.
he's a busy
Talking to the moon,
Mercury
too.
during the
Look at that
second
trine.
house here. Yeah. So clearly, you know, Mercury likes to talk about Jupiter and all the sex that Jupiter's having all over the world, right, girls? Jupiter and Sag in the fifth. I travel all
Yeah.
over and have sex.
That's
And then-
that's a chatty Mercury about your sex life.
Yeah,
Ooh,
but also,
Lord.
like the gifts. Think about the gifts and like favors you get from people. like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bribery, extortion, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then we have-
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Then we also have Mercury talking to Venus and Mars and Saturn, right? So
Yeah.
talking about all the people who are in service to him and his sexual needs as well,
Mm,
right?
His lavish lifestyle.
mhm.
Yeah.
Living large.
So it's interesting that Ghislane Maxwell, his BFF, she's a super Capricorn, right? Does she have a stellium of Capricorn
yeah.
planets, I
Mm.
believe?
Giant cap stellium.
So she has been the provider of his needs, right? So in the news lately has been Ghislane, and recently her getting convicted of quite a few charges, and that's happened during a Venus retrograde in Capricorn.
So
I don't think Venus has gotten as far as 28 Cap, no, because I think she went
She
to
got
what,
to
27,
26 or
7-ish.
27.
Mhm.
Yeah.
somewhere in there. So she definitely got to Mars. But she's close enough to Venus. So everyone goes for a ride with this Venus retrograde.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Venus retrograde plus Pluto is unearthing all of the information around the young girls that he was around the sex that was happening, how it was getting to him, who was procuring these people for him. All this stuff is coming out in the wash right now. Right, so that's the second house here. Now we're going to be going into a third house here, right?
Yeah.
So on his next birthday,
I've been ruled by Venus.
so for his next birthday on February 19th, he's going into a third house here, ruled by Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus and Capricorn.
It's the same story.
It's the same story. We're not going anywhere. We're probably going to get deeper into the story now.
Sure.
I don't think Venus has cleared shadow like by the time of his solar return even.
She doesn't. Venus is clear, I think, on March 6th, roughly.
Wow.
So that means for his birthday, Venus is still going to be going through her retrograde shadow story. She's going to be coming out of it, but she's still bringing up all this stuff for the birthday. Right?
And he'll still be in it.
Now, for his Venus here, what do we see? Venus talks to Mars. She talks to Saturn, but she gets no help from Jupiter right next door.
Nope.
Right? So we're in his second house here. Jupiter does buffer from some of the harshness that come in. For his third house here, he doesn't get that Jupiter help in the natal chart.
Also, with a Venus here, everyone sees it in the 10th.
Yes,
Yep.
because Venus is also the ruler of his
the
10th
10th.
house up top. So there's going to be a lot of public things coming up, I think, via this Venus coming up next year in his next birthday. Not looking too great.
Wow.
Not with Mars and Saturn as her company friends.
No, and they're both like overpowered and shit. Like
Yeah, these are
Mars is
super.
rejoicing and like exalted, literally just like benefiting from like Saturn carrying him. Like it's nuts.
These two guys are super strong in this chart.
Do y'all think that maybe this speaks to a little bit of maybe like employees coming out against him?
I could see it,
Possible.
honestly. I wouldn't be surprised.
I would also wonder if there's going to be some health issues for him. Like the stress of all of this.
Also, this is another good advanced perfection example because the fourth
Okay.
house meets its ruler in the sixth.
Oh, okay.
It could be a mix of mom's health issues translating into him possibly like having more responsibility or like receiving more honors from mom. It could also have to do with like him being relieved of certain duties to go do something he really wants to be doing and retiring to like I don't know, it's just giving like him being able to retire to certain elements of like his private life.
Well,
And
if like maybe his mom gives him something, you
like
know,
an
a
estate.
bequeathment, an estate,
Yeah,
something along those lines.
so that he can start over and actually do something meaningful with his
It
life.
feels like maybe real estate-y. Yeah,
It
right?
does
With
feel
the
real
fourth.
estate-y.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Well, she did pay off some stuff for him, right?
Mhm.
I think somewhere in his second house year, he owed some people some money and somehow that was paid off, I think.
Okay.
About a piece of land or a property or a house. I mean, it was a chalet or something like that. I don't know. But that might be some of that. But do you think it will be successful with Mars and Saturn? I always feel like things are going to get cut.
Well, because like Mars and Saturn are like pretty dignified in this chart, I will say it will work, but probably at the expense of somebody. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else about this natal?
Nope.
Is the turn looking like?
So for his next solar return chart.
Wow,
so,
same angles.
So this is still what, a Venus here, right? So Venus is in Capricorn, right?
Yep, conjunct Mars.
She sees Mars.
Look at that planetary return too. Like it's not exact, but it's like with solar returns, even if you have like a same sign return, that's a big deal. It's like doubling down on like the natal promise, especially because the angles are like very similar.
The angles are so similar, yeah.
This time Venus does see Jupiter, so maybe there will be some support, and she does not see Saturn next door, so Saturn will not be tangling. So, you know, this year looks a little bit better in terms of how much help Venus gets.
Yeah.
And Jupiter is pretty strong in Pisces. So what's the story here?
Honestly, it's giving settling. He's settling some shit, and he's probably stepping away from public life. Like, look at that Uranus on the midheaven.
Changing
Venus
status.
conjunct Mars.
Like going away.
Yep.
I'm kind of wondering, yeah, if like he manages to pay people off in some way.
Yeah.
With the moon also in the second, like greasing the right palms so that he can slip out.
Charles paying him to go away.
Wondering, yeah.
The saying, like.
But where's the money coming from? Because Mercury is in charge of the second house, and it's right next to Pluto.
Yeah, and it's technically like averse to him, and like all I know is like with that Jupiter, because it's like other people's money, like it's definitely not his money.
It's not his, yeah. I'm not
It's
sure
not
exactly
his
whose
money,
it
that's
is.
for sure.
Could it be the public purse again? Because, you know, I think Aquarius, I think of a collective money source.
Sure.
Yes. But I'm also thinking of like, because you know, like I think of the fifth house as like the derived second for the fourth, like obviously mommy's money. Like
yeah.
you know. So
well, when I'm thinking of the eighth too, I'm thinking of inheritances.
Yeah.
So a will, you know, from mom or someone else that gives him enough money to pay everybody off so he can disappear.
well. Could also be his friends too, because I'm thinking with Mercury in charge of the 11th house too.
Mm.
Maybe he knows people who have to pay out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I want him to get in big trouble, but I'm not sure I see it in this solar return.
I don't think he will get in trouble because I think he'll settle.
Yeah.
Like whatever he is doing in court will get settled out, and then
Mhm.
like I think that he'll be given like an estate and possibly like a little like pet project to go work on in his corner, and
Mm.
like as long as he does that, he'll just need to stay away from people.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, so he doesn't have Jupiter helping in this coming year in terms of, even his natal chart. Jupiter will be moving away. It's off now. So, the fact that his friend got, convicted for all these charges and everyone's looking at him in the court of
Mhm.
public opinion, he's taking yet another beating, I would
Right.
say. So, yeah, we're going to see that, I think, a lot with some Leo risings. The other person I think about is going to be Trump.
Mm.
Now that Jupiter's moved out the 7th, some of
Mm.
the shine is starting to wear off.
Mm.
I will say that like for Andrew, in terms of transits, because I feel like this is a good segue into transits for him.
Mm.
Like, could we look at his natal again? Because I just
Yeah.
want to see exactly how it's hitting his natal.
Mhm.
So just because he's going into like a year where the cardinal signs are active, like I feel like it's like kind of him getting off the hook, sort of, but not really, because Pluto is still there, like
Mhm.
basically wrecking stuff.
Mhm.
I will
I
say
feel like
that
he like escapes litigation, but not like public scrutiny or
yeah,
like his
exactly.
loss of status in public, but like not locked up.
No, exactly. I agree with that. I will say I think that like obviously that Mars Venus Pluto conjunction on his Venus at the end of like I think at the end of February is
Mhm.
going to be pretty loud. Like it feels like the last ditch at like it feels like any chance of like really getting him in serious trouble beyond like paying a large sum of money it happens around then.
Mhm.
And it's almost like it's not really like exoneration for him, but it's not like great
Conviction.
either, but
Yeah.
it's like better than like being convicted.
Mhm.
What else for his chart? I don't like that his lunar return in May is that eclipse in the 4th.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Because it's like I feel like it's alluding to like whatever's going on with Elizabeth.
Mm.
And Charles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what, May 6th, April 30th and May 16th, I think.
16th, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 3 days before my birthday. I'm like, oh, great.
It's like the day after mine. Like what else for him? Oh, so I know like it's not really like a perfected transit, but like I think it'll still be loud nonetheless because Mars rules his midheaven. The Mars retrograde in Gemini
Yeah.
for him. I think it's worth paying
11th.
attention to.
Mm.
So when Mars goes to Gemini, so maybe more news about his friends.
Yeah.
Especially, I would think the men would probably come up a lot more.
Mhm.
So who he was traveling to go see, what were they doing? Like, there's probably going to be some sort of dual commentary coming out about the people that he spends time with.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I also even feel like the progression of Mars through Aries, but also more importantly into Taurus, will be really loud for him in particular.
Mhm.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, still a lot of privilege because, he has connections to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislane Maxwell, Peter Nygaard. I think there might be another name that's floating up recently that I don't quite remember.
Mm.
So this is not just one person. This is several people, and there's images of him all over the place with these particular people who are also associated with the same crimes.
Right.
So yeah, it's looking a little bit rough. But the privilege is that he has the opportunity of skating. If it was any of us, we would be in jail already.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's just.
And when he
Mhm.
gets in like a little bit of trouble, he just goes and runs up to mommy's house.
But if mommy is getting sick,
Mm-hmm.
right, and we're seeing this not only in his chart, but in Charles's chart and Elizabeth's chart, that this spring is looking kind of dicey.
Mm-hmm.
For terms of transits, eclipses, Jupiter, that kind of stuff is looking like there might be some significant changes.
Yeah. Well, and we all know there's no love lost between Charles and Andrew.
Yeah.
So Charles steps up. Andrew's gonna get in more hot water because mommy won't be able to protect him.
Mm-hmm. Well, good luck, sir. Not really, but yeah. I mean, I feel like I have to say that.
Oh, like good luck, sir, but not really.
Yeah, it's just like people are going through bad transits. I feel like I have to say good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really feeling like this year changes a lot for Andrew either. Like it just feels kind of, I don't know. I'm not saying like, oh my God, like just because he doesn't get like convicted right away that all this stuff is going to go away. But like, I feel like if we look at other transits for other years, like 2023, 2024 for Andrew, probably not great. 2022 is just kind of like
it's a
also feeling
continuation of theme.
It's like continuation rather than like anything really changing. Like
except for maybe his home situation, maybe. But
yeah, I mean, it's significant in that his angles are being jostled by the eclipses, right? His Leo and Aquarius rising are going to get a hit, his 4th and his 10th, so that's significant. I'd probably say, like you're saying, Mo, when Saturn moves into Pisces, would really be something for him.
2023, Saturn moves into Pisces. We start getting eclipses in Aries and Libra. To move into Aries and Libra. Like, I feel like that's when we'll really see consequences for Andrew. Definitely not now.
Yeah,
hold your breath, people.
Yeah, I think just the wheels of the law, the legal system move slow.
And we know that the legal system is going through some stuff in the UK. Like their government, it feels like their government is not too great. Like Trump was bad, but their government seems like even worse in some ways than what we just dealt with.
And just from someone who used to be working in the legal field, COVID just hit everything so hard there, and everything's so behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a setup for what's coming next, I would say. And if he doesn't play his cards right, what comes up next is probably going to be pretty hard.
But he's also in a tight spot, and it doesn't look like he has very many places to turn.
No. His friends are going to jail.
His family, they're not great helping him, except for maybe his mom, who's getting sick. Everyone else doesn't like him. His friends are all kind of gone, have already kind of turned on him. So he doesn't have a lot of options.
No. I do wonder, though, random thought, I do wonder how much, is it Eugenie is a part of the story for some reason?
Eugenie?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, if she is the second born child, I think she would be the 7th cusp baby, possibly. And she's Saturn in this chart. Remember, she was doing work around sex assault and survivors at some point, right? So I wonder if she's been involved in potentially have some involvement in the things that have been coming out around him. Because I've noticed that neither of the girls come up at all when he's going through shit. Like at all. So I wonder how much distance they've created, but I wonder if Eugenie is involved in terms of like helping the survivors and victims in some way.
Yeah.
And if he even knows that, I don't think he would know that if she was. But just a random thought.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, anything else about Andrew?
No, not really.
Ugh. And the lady of the hour, Miss Ghislane Maxwell. Well, she just got indicted?
Convicted.
Indicted and convicted of several charges related to sex trafficking. So
we don't have to say allegedly anymore.
Yes, so she is a convicted sex trafficker. And now I think she's in a New York City prison. So this might be the rest of her life. How she's in her 60s now. She's 60 years old.
60,
She just turned 60. So even if her sentence is 15 to 20 years, this is, not
this
the
is
best time.
This is a timed chart, right?
Yeah, it's a time chart.
Okay.
So she just turned 60, so now she is in a first house year. Right? Her first house is ruled by Mercury, so Mercury is the lord of the year. In her natal chart, Mercury sees Saturn, right? And she definitely sees Mars. No support from Venus. And no support from Jupiter.
And combust.
Because they're both next door and unable to give Mercury any support, right?
Yep.
So
and it's a weak as hell Mercury.
It's a Mercury in a house that is not too hot. It's right on top of the sun. It has Saturn right on the end and Mercury right before. So this is not a happy Mercury. And maybe this is talking about how Ghislane generally feels about herself on some level. Right? This may not be someone who sees...
going to fucking prison. It's great. Like, you can't get any louder than that. Like, yeah.
I'd be curious to see what her previous first house years have looked like over the years, just for a thread. But this is not
if we really want to
place.
go there, like literally, like if I guess you could count it, like a couple days before she was born, her brother went into a coma that like eventually he would never wake up from. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that would show up, right? So if the brother is the third house cusp, right?
Yep.
That would be that sun. That sun in the 8th next to Mercury combust.
Yep.
Right. The sibling being kind of scorched.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's not really looking good for her. Let's see. I think all the Mercury retrogrades would be what we pay attention to for her anyway, just because she's like in a Mercury ruled year and they're in that liminal space between, the houses of identity and expression, which are 1, 5, and 9, going into like the houses of endings, secrets, and legacies, which are, 4, 8, and 12. So the earth signs for her. And I feel like that's pretty loud. So. And we're starting the year with a Mercury retrograde right on top of her midheaven Jupiter conjunction.
Oh, right.
So I don't know. I know didn't her lawyer say they were going to appeal or something?
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe this retrograde is the attempt at an appeal, and then like
it's rejected?
It's rejected at the end. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Mercury in the 8th, also ruling the 4th, is also like not looking good because it's just looking like, with her possibly going to prison and whatnot, like pending, the appeal, if it happens or not, losing your possessions, losing your home, losing whatever. Like,
got Pluto there.
Yeah.
And it's a shock right next to Uranus,
Yep.
It's like a major shock to your change and where you're living. Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sis, you're in prison.
And then the eclipses are over her 6th and 12th, and 12th is prison.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Yeah, but I could also see some health issues coming up for her as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, going to
Around that.
prison isn't good for anybody's health.
Going to prison
No.
is, but especially not for a woman who's never thought that she'd be in this position.
yeah, no.
Right. And they've
No.
already been trying to bring that forward for her. I think her brothers come out into the media and be like, oh, they're giving her terrible food. I'm like, yeah, girl, welcome to American fucking
Welcome
prison.
to
Like,
Yeah,
America
that's
for
what
the rest
happens.
of my life.
yeah, like, honey, do you know that they have treated people who've done much lesser crimes than you, much worse than you? It's
Mhm.
like, wow.
Go look at the pictures from Rikers Island, right? I mean,
You
come on.
know?
But
So-
also, I think they were trying to do something with her because of COVID, trying to not have her have to report to prison right away. And it's like, they don't care anymore. They're letting us on the outside die COVID,
Yeah.
so they don't really care.
And we're not saying this, to be facetious, because there are plenty of people who do not deserve to be in prison right now in the middle
Oh,
of
of
the
course.
pandemic.
Mhm.
However, for this lady to whine about it is
Right.
just like,
It's
ma'am.
rich. It's rich.
It's like, excuse me, ma'am.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the severity of your crime right now,
Mhm.
because it's interesting. I'm like, this is going to be some interesting karma for her. Just like, imagine all the women, young girls, and possibly young boys. I don't think it was just young girls,
Mhm.
but who felt the same way, who
Right.
were stolen
Mhm.
and held captive,
Imprisoned, yeah.
imprisoned by you.
And didn't want to be there either. So
So,
what's the
you know,
deal? Why do you think you're better? You know?
I don't know. I do not
Mhm.
know. So, anything else about her first house year in her natal?
I think we got it.
What's
No.
going on in the solar return chart?
There we go.
Oh wow.
So Mercury again is in his same sign.
Mercury loud.
He does
Mercury,
see
wow.
Venus. It's in the 5th house. So I guess we're going to be talking a lot about these things.
Mhm.
All the sex and the pleasures and the gallivanting, girl. Just, but no.
It's aggressively loud. Like even like all the like I'm thinking about the fact that Mercury is like in that middle decan of Capricorn, and I'm thinking about like the elaborate structure of like whatever scheme she was involved in. Like I think this is going to be a year where a lot of that comes up.
Like untangling the web.
Yep.
I think also possibly.
Is she gonna name names?
I think so. I think it's gonna be some of that
Listen,
little black
with Mercury
No,
talking.
with all that Mercury retrograde and that Mars retrograde in her first house. Oh God, yeah.
She's gonna be talking.
She will be talking.
Yeah. But in this chart, so Mercury does speak to Venus in the solar return chart, but he does not tangle with Saturn or with Jupiter.
No.
And he doesn't talk to Mars. So this is solely Mercury and Venus this year.
Interesting.
So maybe this could be part of the plea deal, or not a plea deal, but maybe they'll soften the sentence if she names names. A touch.
If she names names and like gives people away, absolutely.
Yeah.
I won't be surprised, like just looking at the solar return on its own, like, and because I know that like not too long after this, like Mercury and Venus did conjoin. I wouldn't be surprised if like, she had like the potential for books or interviews in the works at some point. Especially if she does plan to name names and like, try to get her like sentencing like reduced. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, Venus in this chart does rule the 2nd house, right? Money made through creative projects, possibly, and also unearthing secrets, right? So that's a big thing.
I mean, look at that grand trine with Uranus in the 9th, Mercury in the 5th, and the moon, which rules the 11th of this chart in the ascendant.
So this is bringing in publishing, right?
Yep.
Some of the things about the traveling that she was doing, right? So all of these things have potential to, she's probably gonna need the money, right?
Yeah.
Because I doubt they're gonna stop fighting to get her out of jail, but they're gonna need cash for that.
Yeah.
So, well, anything else about this you want to add in?
Did you want to look at any transits or?
Just a couple. Like,
Okay, I'll go back. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the Mars
Retro.
Mars retrograde in her first house, like later this year, will be her like telling her story and telling her side of things. I think. Because it stations direct to a trine with her midheaven.
She's gonna be
in that
more
chamber.
visible, huh?
Yeah, I do also worry that some people might try to like, especially like as if she does start to like tell her part of the story, if people do try to put a hit on her, because you know Mars does rule the 6th house.
Yeah. Yeah, she needs to be careful how she speaks.
Yeah.
There's something about when the Saturn gets to the south node. This is from Judith Hill's book on the nodes. But there's a thing that talks about we pay our karmic debts when Saturn reaches the south node. It is time for something or someone that has formed our foundation to exit. Some leave a career, others sell the family home. This is an excellent time for cleansing oneself of past patterns, habits, old tapes, toxins, and our rigid accretions of personality. Lighten up and purify. So, you know, if she wanted to vent all the crimes, that would be a good time to do it when Saturn gets to that south node.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, it's not the best time to buy property, build or start a business, or marry.
She doesn't have to worry about that.
Unemployment is common at this time. This is
Yeah.
a foremost time for a complete rest and a time out from all worldly striving. Well, sis, the 12th house is the perfect place for that.
Literally,
Restoration will do that.
enjoy prison. Like
I think that transit perfects in the spring, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, and then Saturn, because Saturn goes retrograde, it'll be going all over
Going
that
back.
much of the year.
Going forward, backing up. Going forward, backing up.
Yeah. So 100% definitely.
Yeah, and then her moon also gets eclipsed by square. I think this moon gets a pretty direct hit
It
in
does.
spring. And that also rules over her money, right? So maybe she's one of the people that's also paying out the victims. She'll be one of Andrew's friends who are paying out I'm sorry money.
Well, since she got convicted, I mean, that does open the door to more, you know, litigation against her.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Ugh. I mean, anyway, girl, I'm sure they're pedophilia is not a kink, obviously.
No, it's not. It's
It's
weird
not.
and it's wrong. Like, period.
I wish they had found a healthier way of expressing their kinks that did not involve abusing minors and snatching them all over the world to
Look, those two could have opened a crazy cool BDSM sex club and
for the rich and
like
famous.
franchised it, you know, with consenting adults.
Right? It could have been a money mine. Like they could have gone on, and that could have gone on forever. Especially now that people are becoming more progressive and open about kink. The fact that they did all this just makes it really like, oh girl, you didn't have to do all that.
No, unnecessary and disgusting.
Womp womp. Anything else about Miss Ghislane?
No.
I think that's our show.
I have some more resources. Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about solar returns or profections, you can read Hellenistic Astrology. Study of Fate and Fortune. It's only like 900 pages. It goes real fast.
I'm still working through it.
I know. Me too.
Textbook. I'll be like, ugh, where was I?
Where was I? If you want something smaller, The Art of Forecasting Using Solar Returns by Anthony Lewis has like kind of like an intro to solar returns, which I kind of liked. Demetra George talks about solar returns and profections in ancient astrology. And I think Mo, you said you liked On the Revolutions of the Years by Nativities by Abu Mashar. I haven't read that one yet, but I'm working through Abu Mashar. It's just, I don't know how people only lived to be like 40 years old back in the day and wrote 9,000 books. Like, I don't know how they did that.
That's too much.
Kudos to them.
Good for them.
Mm-hmm. And then if you want to follow us on social media, there are our handles on the Twitters. And I think, Mo, are you also on Instagram at the same handle?
I think I should be. It's like similar. Like you'll find me on there.
Yeah. You can look at me on Instagram if you want, but I never post there, so don't waste your time.
Yeah, I don't post on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter.
Talking.
That's our show, I think.
Yay. We did
Let us
it.
know what you guys think. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what other topics you want us to cover when it comes to this family, or if you want us to look at other royal households, because I'm sure those would be kind of fun too.
Yeah, so like we also wanted to do predictions for, it was what? William and Kate, Harry and Meghan. Is that it? So that'll be the next one.
Yes, for the Windsor family.
Your faves.
Faves with their sweet little cutie pies.
I know, I know. But I think it'll be good if we look at the two brothers. But yeah, we've also kind of been interested in looking at maybe other royal families. There's plenty of them, which is weird in 2022 to say that we still have a bunch of monarchies.
Sure enough, we'll see if they last through these Uranus and Taurus transits.
We'll see.
We'll see. So a couple years to go with that. But of course, this is always fun, ladies. Thank you so much for talking about this with me. It's one of my favorite topics. So I love
Mine
it.
too. I'm so glad we found each other so we can talk about it.
Until next time, everyone, have a great one. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Let's make 2022 something to talk about.
Oh my God, I have to find.
Bye, bye, bye.